Hey now, it's the Fifth Mascot, widely regarded as the definitive baseball show on the internet, winner of multiple awards, some of whom we can actually talk about in public. Welcome in, along with Mike Canan and John Erardi, I'm Ken Broo. Is Bryan Price dead man walking?
Oh my gosh, where do we start on that one, Ken?
I mean, Castellini says yesterday, he says, Bryan Price will be our manager for the rest of this season, and we'll evaluate at the end of the season. That to me sounds like, you know, get your affairs in order.
Yeah, it's hard to pass that evaluation if you're Bryan Price, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike?
I don't see that he's done enough. He's been dealt a bad hand, but what has he done with it? I mean, he hasn't done anything to save himself on the field or off the field, with the incident with Cueto and Lorenzen, you know, walking out and saying you've just been traded, and the whole blow up with the reporter. I mean, I don't see those things as being something that would kill him if this team was decent, but I think it's just two more big incidents that just tip him over the edge.
Wrong place, wrong time. Not that I'm equating the two, but I look at Ned Yost. Okay, when Ned Yost was in Milwaukee, it was wrong place, wrong time. He goes to Kansas City. All of a sudden, it's an up-and-coming organization. He's a manager of a World Series team. He may very well win the World Series. This team. I think it was a bad fit for Bryan Price. I think he's got managerial skills, but Sparky Anderson couldn't manage this team to any better than what it is right now. You just don't have talent on that field, enough of it on that field.
You're right, and that's why if I were Barry Larkin, Ken, I wouldn't take this job, because there's not enough talent. I mean, the one thing that Bryan Price has done, I think he's kept them playing, but when you start racking up these losses like one of those machines at Horseshoe Casino, you cannot survive that. They're looking at probably close to a 100-loss season, and if you're a no-name guy, unfortunately, like Bryan is, you're probably going to lose your job.
Here's what I would do if I was Barry Larkin. If they come to me and they say, "Hey, you want this?" I'd say, "Here's the deal. This is the deal. I don't want Walt Jocketty as my general manager. I want somebody in there that's young, that understands how this game works in 2016, and let's start together as a team. Because if he comes in as Jocketty's guy, first of all, they're oil and water, because Jocketty is not going to have anything on it, because Jocketty's gone in a year. If Castellini puts him in there without Jocketty's approval, Jocketty's gone within a year. Nothing gets done in 2016. And secondly, if they leave Jocketty up to the hiring process, which I can't imagine there would, then Larkin's tenure here could be a little dicey, because his general manager isn't going anywhere. General manager may want to throw a head on the plate just to keep himself employed. I
mean, they need to, and look, I like a lot of the moves that Jocketty has made, but they need to make sure that the whole leadership organization is all about the way baseball is played today, and understanding analytics, and understanding how to build a farm system and how to build a sustainable winning team. And maybe they have that. I just don't get a sense that they do. I don't get a sense that Jocketty really understands the way business is done these days in Major League Baseball. And I don't know about Larkin. I don't know if he's a sabermetrics guy or if he's a Dusty Baker guy. I don't know if he's a players coach or a management coach.
Because he hasn't managed anything.
Because he's never managed anything. Like I like to think that he would be a great manager, but I just don't know. I don't know what he would do or how he would operate. And
to draw a parallel to, I think, Mike Matheny, who managed nothing before he took the Cardinals job, that was basically Tony La Russa handed him the keys and say, "Don't wreck the Ferrari." You know, I mean, the pieces were in place there. Here, there's no minor league infrastructure. They appear to have monetary problems with existing contracts. So, I mean, you're at least, if you're Larkin, you're at least 3 years away from saying, "Here's my team."
Right. The one thing about Matheny is, because he was a catcher, I think those guys make better managers without even minor league training. Larkin is smart enough. No, he's not an analytics guy, but he could learn it with the right general manager providing him with the right players. And I think that's what it comes down to, Ken, is that we've seen enough of the powerless managers in this town who are not willing to assert themselves because they have no juice. Larkin would have the juice, but he needs a general manager on his side. They've got to be like that. And I agree with you totally. That should be a package deal. However Mr. Castellini wants to handle it, manager first, GM first. Usually it's GM, then comes the manager. We certainly saw that in 1990 with Bob Quinn and Lou Piniella. So I'm with you. Make it a package deal. Make it tight. And don't make it immediate, because I think this team is probably 2 years away from contending.
At least. And Castellini has got to view this as a business decision. Regardless of how well or how fond of you are of Walt Jocketty, you've got to, for the rest of that organization, look and say, okay, if I'm indeed going to let Bryan Price go, I've got to do something that for the benefit of everybody else that's working here and everybody else in our minor league organization, I've really and truly got to do the right thing here and not just give the fans some sort of symbolic hit on the plate. I've got to go ahead and really try and fix this thing. And I don't think Jocketty can, to be honest with you.
Don't you guys think that it's like John was saying, I think they're going to hold on to Price just because it's too early to bring in Larkin, and he would be here while they were terrible.
Yeah,
he wouldn't learn how to manage.
You can't go into next season with the same cast of characters, and they don't have anything that they can sell next season. I'm not saying you're going to say, hey, come watch Barry Larkin manage, but for him to sit there and say, okay, everybody's coming back, and Mesoraco's going to be healthy, and Cozart's going to be healthy, and we're going to be just fine, you're going to have 15,000 people a night down there.
Well, I don't think they're going to. I don't think hiring Larkin or something is going to make people think we're going to win next year. But it would get excitement. But I think there's a danger, possibly. Who knows what Larkin would be like as a manager? People are excited about it because it's so terrible here, and we want anything to get out from under this. But you could, I think, some people might feel, run the risk of putting him in too early, and he comes in and gets frustrated and burned out like, Ryan Sandberg or something, and you're trying to do something that gets fan interest to peak or go up from the doldrums that it's in now. But if you do it too early and he just comes in and they stink for a long time, a lot of guys like that who are really good players don't have the patience for being a manager of a losing team.
Yeah, but is this not unlike Pete Rose when he came back from the Expos? I mean, I kind of think there's some similarities here. Those teams weren't good when he came back here. Pete had no managerial experience. He's a hometown boy. Larkin's a hometown boy. I'm just wondering if you can't draw a parallel to what happened here 30 years ago.
You probably can. I think one difference, and you know it well, is Pete was a player manager, and I think to some extent he did inspire the guys to play harder. The one point I would make is they had a big stud, a new big stud back then. It was Dave Parker, and of course
Eric Davis was
still around. Yeah. So. Yes, there are parallels. To me, Ken, this team, despite some pretty good parts and a good young pitching rotation, is a long way from what it takes to contend in that division with the up-and-coming teams we're watching develop here, including the Cubs. So I'm kind of in between everybody else. I'll take a middle ground here. Hire Jim Riggleman as an interim manager.
Wow.
Try to explain what you're doing. Again, that's not going to sell tickets, but at least we'll get the fans on board. And I think everybody knows Larkin is coming. Don't give him this team yet, because if he loses 100 games, then he's going to have trouble surviving.
And I think the last thing that Reds fans want, and I've had conversations with multiple friends of mine who are Reds fans, is the last thing they want is Barry Larkin, the hometown hero, to come in and to fail.
Yeah, I
to tarnish what he has done for this city and for this franchise. Nobody wants that, including Larkin and including the Reds. I think that makes sense. What if you hired Riggleman as your manager and make Barry Larkin your bench coach and just said, you sit down next to Riggleman, and every day you watch what he's doing and you'll try to learn from him. I mean, Riggleman's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but
if I'm Riggleman, do I want that? Because I mean,
he's third base coach right now.
Well, yeah. What's he gonna?
He's got nothing.
I mean,
well, I'm not saying
it would be a great way to if he wants to be a manager. I don't think that could, If he wants to be a manager again, I don't think that could hurt his prospects. If he comes in as the interim manager, if they don't do well, I don't think he's going to be seen as the reason. And if they improve at all, he'll be seen as somebody who showed leadership. I mean, I think it would just help his resume even if he was just interim manager, when everybody knows that when Larkin comes in after him, Larkin isn't coming in because Riggleman's a bad manager. They just were trying to set the stage for Barry and the hometown boy and Shangri-La.
Yeah, but as John mentioned too, and I think this is critical. This team isn't going to be good for a while.
Yeah.
Its organization I don't care what happy smoke is coming out of downtown. Its organization is devoid of any real talent other than Robert Stevenson and Jesse Winker.
Right.
So when we hear that and we know they've got financial constraints, if you're waiting for this team to get good before Barry Larkin becomes manager, he may die of old age. I mean, it may be 2018 or 2000. I mean, at what point do you say to Barry, okay, you're the guy. Here's your team. I don't know when that happens. And if you're him, do you want to be that patient?
Well, I mean, I'm probably the most optimistic of the three of us, and
thank you,
of the six of us.
What are we saying?
That's okay. I want somebody.
Are
to
we
be
negative?
More,
are you trying to say we're negative?
I think
you might be telling the truth, but you are negative.
I think that if they could come up with some creative moves, that this team could be decent. Now the problem is, as John put it, this division is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really competing against another team in your division for a wild card spot, probably.
Right.
Even if they get good and are an 85 to 90 win team, and I think a lot of things would have to go right for that to happen.
Yeah.
But I think Reds leadership and Reds management still thinks they can be a strong team in 2016, whether that's delusional or not. And I think that's why, if they make a move, I think that's why they will make a move, and I think that's why they wouldn't hesitate to put Larkin in that spot, because I don't think they think that this is another 70-win team next year.
Yeah, Mike, that wouldn't surprise me if Larkin was the manager in 2016. I would caution Barry Larkin against that, because if you're a first-year manager and you don't have any experience managing a ball club before, if he has a horrible year or two, he will not get another job on it.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen time and time again. I don't care who the name is, even Orion Sandberg in Philly, Tony Perez. You cannot overcome that. So again, I would caution Larkin, not that he listens to me, but to be patient, wait till the team's a little better, probably 2 years from now, then slide in. And again, to me, there's no way Castellini is going to avoid some tough seasons at the gate the next 2 years. I think he wants to avoid that at all costs. I don't think he can.
Well, and it's always like with attendance, it tends to be like what you do this year affects what you do next year.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
When they were good, it was the next year. All of a sudden, they're selling tickets like crazy. And I think they're going to have a hard time next year unless in the first month of the season they're on fire.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the future. Robert Stevenson is down in AAA, 4-2 with that team at this point. Had some malady of some sort here the last couple of weeks, but came back and threw 4 scoreless innings the other night. I guess we're going to see him in September, which is next week.
Great.
They're going to bring him up and let him make some major league starts. I'm all for it. Why not?
Yeah.
It sounds like Bryan Price wants to see him in September, and this could be a good indication. If he's not here, I think it's a good indication no one cares what Bryan Price thinks.
Okay, that'll be an interesting litmus test. You're right.
But you've got a number of home games in September. From a business standpoint, why wouldn't you want to bring him up here and say, let's see what he's got? And the same thing with Jesse Winker. I mean, do you want to roll out the same clowns each week, or do you want to see somebody that could necessarily be an answer to the problem?
Well, I agree with you on Stevenson. Winker, I don't think it's on the 40-man, so I don't think they're going to bring him up.
Well, they could release somebody and put him on that.
Yeah, but then you've taken up a 40-man spot. He doesn't have to go on the 40-man. I think Stevenson has to go on the 40-man at the end of this year. Mm-hmm. The only thing with Stevenson,
you have to put Winker on the 40-man if you call him up in September.
Yeah.
Oh.
The only thing with Stevenson, with bringing him up now, is you start his service time clock ticking.
Well, see, again, and that bothers me too. Are you in this to win it, or are you in this to save nickels?
Well, you're talking about you don't think they're going to be a winner for a couple years, so why would you start the clock ticking in the last month of the failed season?
You saw that with the Cubs with Chris Bryant.
Yeah.
He was clearly ready. I personally, Ken, I'm with you. I would bring him up just because it's probably going to help him for next year. And yes, this team's going to be tough to watch next year, but again, with that starting rotation, I like so much about it, especially Iglesias. He's the guy I like of them all.
Yeah.
If you get Stevenson kind of ready and he starts to get a feel for it, if he can get in the mix, then suddenly, hey, every night of 5, you've got a pretty good pitcher going.
Right.
And I think that'll keep people, at least some people, coming to the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if Bailey comes back and pitches like Bailey before he got hurt and comes back before July, and Iglesias pitches the way he's been pitching, and Stevenson comes up and pitches pretty well, you're talking about the potential that DeSclafani is your number 4 starter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty solid.
And that's called hope.
Yeah.
And if you can't win, you better have some hope.
Exactly.
And that's good hope. I personally like that approach.
I never liked hope. She went to bed too late. I like faith, because she got it all done before midnight. Apparently, Michael Lorenzen is coming up, and David Holmberg is going down, and Here's Michael Lorenzen in Louisville, and frankly, all this tells me is it's a light year between here and AAA baseball, because I mean, this guy was shelled like a hillside in Beirut. I mean, he was just horrible his last 3 starts here, and I don't know whether he's, I don't know whether he's ever going to be a quality major league pitcher. He's young, so you can't give up on him. But all that tells me is the difference between AAA and Major League Baseball, Mike, is huge.
Well, he could have been shell-shocked, Well, I mean, he came up and he pitched well for a while, and then I think a lot of guys you start thinking too much. I mean, it's like that at almost every level of any sport. When you get to the top, you get into the Sunday afternoon at a golf tournament and you're winning all of a sudden and you're freaking out.
Well, then this isn't the place for you.
Yeah.
Well, but every player goes through that. That's why in baseball you have to go between several leagues before you can get there. So you have to work out all the the jitters and learn how to play at different levels. And I think it definitely could be that he had a good spurt, then a bad spurt in the majors, and he could settle down and be a good pitcher.
Well, you gave us your starting 5, and DeSclafani was like 4 of the 5. Yeah. I mean, does this guy even fit into the 5 next year?
I think it's too early to tell on that, but they did say right before he got sent down that he had, in between when his last start where he got shelled and his first start in the minors, that he'd figured out something mechanical. So if he figured out something mechanical, it could be just like, okay, this is back to what he was doing when he was successful. I think he's got really high upside. I don't know what he's going to be. You got a lot of guys that would be potentially competing for that 5th spot if it's Stevenson, Iglesias, Bailey, and DeSclafani. I think if Stevenson's in the rotation, that's your 4, and then the 5th spot, it's Lorenzen, Cingrani, Holmberg. Mascot, if he comes back from his injury.
There's a lot of guys we don't know a lot about.
There's a lot of guys competing for that last spot. And then that's not even counting the John Lamb, Brandon Finnegan guys who you got in trades who could be contenders for a spot too.
Somebody told me Cody Reed, and this is one of those baseball guys I talked to. Cody Reed is the best of all of those pitchers that they acquired. Okay. Deadline deal. The kid down at he said he's got better stuff, higher upside. I said, well, what about Maya, who's at high A? He says, looks great, he said, but it's high A ball. He says, this other guy's proven he can pitch at Double A. He says he'd be surprised if Reed's not at Triple A at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If you can pitch in Double A, you can certainly pitch in Triple A. And you know what? If you can pitch in Double A, you can probably pitch in the major leagues.
Well, it's happened before, right? They brought guys up from Double A.
So what I think they will look to do is in the off season, we just talked about 10 guys who could be in the starting rotation. I think they will try to package a few of those guys and try to trade for some young bats.
I hope.
And then they will take the best 5 and put them in the this is what I hope they'll do. Take the best 5, put them in the rotation, and the next best 4, 3, however many they got, and put them in the bullpen. And see what that can do. They've got to do something with the bullpen, and going out and signing veteran guys is not going to be a smart plan.
They got it, but offense is so hard to find. It really is.
It is.
Especially young offense. I mean, there's really not a lot out there.
So the season has gone to the dogs. Let's talk about dogs. Bark at the Park. This is wildly successful for dog lovers. The dogs come to the park and they watch the game and they sniff each other and they have something to drink. It's a not unlike some humans, but it's wildly successful. And I'm surprised, given every devil their due, I'm surprised Marge didn't come up with this as much as she loves Shotzi and dogs. But I love this. You can take your dog to the ballpark. I like it a lot. If I had a dog, I'd take my dog.
I did it once.
Yep.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I did it once. I have 2 dogs, and one of them really liked it, and one of them got a little nervous just about the whole atmosphere. But I wanted to do it, and I had a really good time. The best part is you get to walk around. You do a lap on the warning track and whatever the foul line, and you take your dog out there, and I guess they had people there ready to pick up after him. But yeah, we walked right in front of the dugout with the dogs. But I thought it was great. First time I ever saw it was about 10 years ago. Maybe more in Charleston. I go down there sometimes for vacation, and they have a team called the River Dogs, which is like a Double-A Yankee thing, and they did it in a real small park. But I was surprised it ever caught on, and now they keep expanding how many games. But it was fun. And yeah, I'm a dog lover. I have dogs, and I definitely did it once. I wouldn't take the one dog down again because he got nervous, but it's fun. I'm surprised they keep doing it. But
would you take your dogs to a movie?
Would I take them to a movie?
Yeah,
no, I doubt it. No, I doubt it.
I mean, like not like a long film, like maybe like something that's like 80 minutes long. You wouldn't do that?
Do those movies exist anymore?
Yeah, some of them do.
Kids movies?
But I mean, at a movie, you're supposed to be quiet and not bother other people. At a game, that's sort of, that's sort of.
You have to talk to the dogs beforehand and tell them that you don't want to bark.
You're obviously not a dog owner, but okay.
But my point being is they did it one year and they did it one time, and I thought it was great. Now they're doing it 3 times. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. I think it's a lot of. Oh, that's a Cocker Spaniel. Look at that. Isn't she gorgeous? Those are the kind of dogs I had. She's gorgeous, but that's who you. Maybe it's a he. I don't know. I don't mean to, emasculate the dog or anything. But it's. I just really and truly think that it's a great idea, and they need to do more. They're going to have to do like bark at the park, like each homestand. I think.
There you go.
Fireworks every night, bobbleheads every night, and dogs at least one homestand. Because that's the only way they're going to get people down there.
Yeah.
But I don't know why she never came up with the idea with the.
Right. Marge was the trendsetter, and she didn't even know it.
Next year, when they have bark at the park, when they are announcing the attendance, are they counting the dogs?
They might, yeah.
They're gonna have to.
Yeah. Along with Buffy Lacoste bobblehead night. Okay, so we want to talk about
This Week in Reds History.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
This Week in Reds History, August the 30th, 1972. So that would be 39 years ago, right?
Okay. No, that can't be right.
No, it's 40.
9 and 2 is one.
40. I went to Ohio University too. 43 years ago.
There you
On
go.
the same night in different games, Pete Rose of the Reds and the Pirates' Roberto Clemente both tied their respective club records for hits. With 2 hits at Three River Stadium, the Pirates outfielder equaled Honus Wagner's club mark, 2970, and Cincinnati's Charlie Husso matched Vada Pinson's total when he singled at Riverfront Stadium to collect 1,881 hits. Who knew back then he was going to get 4256? And Pete won the Roberto Clemente Award in 1976. I've often said that if Roberto Clemente had played in New York, there would have been no doubt he would have been the greatest baseball player who ever lived. The New York media would have made him that way.
Okay, I didn't know if you meant that he would have been on the Yankees and he would have been better, or just the media.
No,
the media would
this
have made
guy
him
was
better.
so good. I'm old enough to remember him. This
Okay.
guy was so good. His only problem was he played in Pittsburgh, and he played on a number of teams that weren't very good. And then when they got good, he unfortunately was killed. I really think Roberto Clemente, if he had played in New York, would have been considered the greatest outfielder of all time.
Frank Robinson once told me that Roberto Clemente was a guy that other players stopped to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is the highest compliment, because you're looking at guys who are the best at what they do in the world, and they're given endeavor. And if they're watching a guy and saying he's better than the rest of us, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it was such a shame. If I got my facts right, when they picked the All-Century team in 2000, I believe he may not have been on it, and they had to add him. Yeah. That is a travesty, but that goes to your point.
Pittsburgh.
If you play in Pittsburgh, that's what happens to you.
I mean, this guy, he had speed, he had power, he fielded his position with such grace.
Rocket for an
oh my gosh.
And he might not have broken the all-time hit record, but he would have had 500 plus more. He would have been, in the top 4 or 5 people in hits.
And he just wasn't appreciated. Even the morons that were running Topps trading cards, I think in 68 or 69, put on his card Bob Clemente because they didn't want to spell out Roberto or couldn't spell out Roberto. Are you kidding me? Why just call him Mick Mantle? I mean, come on. But he was. I just absolutely thought Clemente was the best. I really did. And that was interesting that both happened. So you got some big names here on this fact here, Matt. You got Roberto Clemente, you got Honus Wagner, you got Vada Pinson, you got Pete Rose.
It was very nice.
Does Vada Pinson belong in the Hall of Fame, by the way?
I don't think if you want to talk about somebody not playing on good enough teams, and that's why they maybe weren't done. That's what Vada Pinson I think would be.
Yeah. I didn't mean to go rogue on you there. I just.
That's all right. No, I want to also recognize nationalpastime.com. That's where I got that one from. It's a great website. You can put in any date, any team, or the whole major leagues, and they come up with all kinds of things. A lot of it is sort of like Wikipedia. I think people submit it, and some of them are sort of very obscure, but that's obviously a great one. They also had the Pete. I also found that Pete won the Roberto Clemente Award in 1976, which looking at that's usually based on character, and nowadays I wonder if he would even be eligible for that. But after it was an award they were giving out before then, I think they called it the Commissioner's Award, and they changed the name of it.
I'm going rogue again, so please forgive me.
Libby and I will try to follow you.
Rob Manfred said this week that he is going to have an answer on the whole Pete Rose thing before the year is out. That's what he said. He told a New York radio station, I think that. What do you think the outcome is going to be when he sits down and he looks at the evidence?
I don't understand what takes so long. I mean, it's not like there's any new evidence here, right? I mean, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I can't even come close to predicting what he's gonna say.
Facts haven't changed.
He will never. I don't think he'll ever be allowed to actually be involved in baseball again. And Manfred has kind of said like, well, that's the Hall of Fame's decision, kind of thing about Hall of Fame. So I don't know. I can't guess where he's going to go.
The Hall of Fame didn't ban him, right? The Hall of Fame didn't ban him. Doesn't the league and the commissioner
ban him? They changed their voting. They changed their voting in '91.
Well,
in essence, just ban him.
Right. They did it to go along. I think they did it to keep in step with the commissioner's office. They were trying not to have him be banned from baseball, but let him be in there. But I'm just saying, I think they followed the commissioner's lead. If the commissioner were to reinstate him, I think they would let him.
What do you think, John? I mean, I can't, for the life of me, imagine, like Mike said, that the commissioner is going to allow him to do anything close to a baseball field. But I got to tell you this: he's been popping up at Great American Ballpark a lot in the last month. So.
Maybe he's your 2016 Reds manager.
Well, that's what baseball is afraid of, which is why they won't reinstate him. But what's interesting to me, and we all know how John Dowd, baseball's investigator, came out with this statement out of nowhere that had Pete hooking up with 12 and 13-year-old girls. And I got to tell you, there's nothing lower than you can say about a person than that. But what gives me some pause, Ken, is that if you kind of think from a distance, why is John Dowd throwing this out there? Might he be concerned that baseball is thinking about reinstating Pete for the limited purpose of even just for the Hall of Fame, which he would have a tough time getting into? But if that's the case, and if those are the tea leaves, and if I'm reading them, I think Manfred just might reinstate Pete for the limited purpose of getting onto the Hall of Fame ballot. And I think that would be as much as Pete could expect. Again, I don't expect him to make the Hall, but there'll be some rejoicing in Cincinnati, even if he's on the Hall of Fame ballot.
Yeah, what happens if he gets reinstated and, as you say, he doesn't get voted in? I guess this thing, it's the gift that keeps on giving. This has been with us since '89. Right. Then think about that. Yeah. Pete Rose goes to his grave and he doesn't get in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you think sports writers are low on the totem pole now. What happens then? In this town.
In this town, yeah.
But the other thing I heard, too, is, and this is, Jason Stark told me this before the All-Star game, or right after the All-Star game. He said he doesn't sense nationally now any more sympathy or any more groundswell for Rose, that he thinks all of that has gone away, and that we're an anomaly, obviously, here in the Cincinnati area. But he just doesn't sense that it's out there, and that may weigh into Manfred's decision. Like, what's the point at this point? It
could very well be the case. I think Mike said earlier he's not sure what took so long. Well, it hasn't taken long for Manfred. The fact that he is willing to go out on a limb and say, I'll make a ruling by the end of the year, that speaks well of Manfred, because he didn't have to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. Seelig was always checking the wind, seeing which way it blew. Well, he's not my boy, but the problem he had was that there was a groundswell early, which is why Seelig seriously considered Pete for reinstatement, and then Pete blew it up with the crazy admission in his own book for profit that, yes, he had bet on baseball. So if I were Manfred, the one thing that would scare me the most, I had a conversation with a guy about this today, what's Pete Rose going to do next? Because even if the pedophile charge is false, and I'm sure that it is, because I know the guy very well, even if that's false, what's the next shoe to drop? Yeah. You want to have this guy even limited reinstatement for any purpose at all, knowing what could happen next? You got to believe. There's not many things I'd bet on, but one thing I'll bet on, Pete's going to be back in the headline every year from now until he dies, because there's a lot of stuff out there.
Think about this. Yeah. Just think about this. Reds need a new manager. Phillies need a new manager. And the franchise formerly known as the Expos are probably going to have a new manager next year.
Wow.
Think about that.
At times like this, I'm glad I'm retired from sports writing, because that's a whole lot of Pete Rose. he occupied my entire 30-year career in the Encore Sports Department.
Okay, so the battle to not lose 100 games continues this weekend in Milwaukee. We'll see all the usual suspects on the mound, Iglesias, Sampson, and Lamb in Milwaukee, and then Holmberg, DeSclafani, and Iglesias in the 3-game series in Chicago.
I think it's Lorenzen instead of Holmberg.
You think that's what's going to happen? Call him up?
I think they said that officially.
Did they?
Did they say it officially? I read it online.
I think they said. If they didn't say it officially, they
What's up there
pretty
now?
much said it officially.
It's got to be official.
Yeah, we typed it in.
Up there now.
But yeah. But what do you think, John? I mean, this could, if they keep, I mean, they lost 9 out of 10 at home, and it can't get a whole lot worse than that. But if they keep on not obviously winning 10% of their games, but if they keep on that kind of pace, they might be the worst team since they've had a 162-game schedule. They certainly are going to be one of the worst. No team's ever won less than 60. I think there was a 61 under Russ Nixon. But
hey, you know, fellas, correct me if I'm wrong. The only good player I remember from '82 wasn't Soto on that team, Mario Soto. I think he was. I mean, to me, there wasn't.
Was Bench on that team?
Bench might have been wrapping it up because he did retire in '83. Yeah,
that's right.
So my point is that, and this is why, to a large extent, I can't believe this team would go down in history as arguably the worst. But if they get past 102 losses, they will. My point about that is that they are nowhere near as bad in talent as they were in '82. So if this team gets to 102 losses, Katie, bar the door, because we're in for a long 2 years here in Cincinnati, because when you establish those kind of benchmarks, you get remembered.
Yeah.
They wrote a 30th anniversary piece on the '82 team back in whatever it was, 2012.
Yeah.
Well, then he has to clean. Castonlee has to clean house at that point. And
I
all
think
of those
so.
guys down there that are jockey, you know, assistants and confidants, they all got it. He truly has to gut the place if that happens.
And I don't know that Bob's ready to do that.
I don't
that
think
was
he
your
is.
point earlier, Mike. I think Bob has great hopes for next year. And Ken, I'm with you. If he does have those kinds of hopes, he's delusional,
Yeah,
because this
absolutely.
team cannot win in that division with this talent.
No.
Not with the way the Pirates and Cubs have moved up. I mean, those two teams are just playing out of their world like right now. And the other thing too, you know, I guess you end up with the worst record in baseball. You got a chance for the #1 pick. I mean,
Look at that. That is, I mean, if you had said that to anybody around here in March, they would have looked like you were on crack.
and if you take, I mean, if you take the roster and look at the Reds roster versus the Brewers roster, just on paper, the Reds should be at least 5 or 10 games better than the Brewers. The Brewers are horrible if you look at them on paper, but the Reds have a worse record.
They're 21 games out of third place.
that's amazing. I mean, the Cubs are 20 games over, and they're 8.5 out.
Yeah.
I mean, the Reds, when they won the division in 1991, were 20 games over.
And they will start.
And they never were out of first place.
and they will start, by my math, the final 74 games of this season with a rookie starting pitcher. 74. That's got to be a record. It's got to be.
imagine
I mean, 1869 it might not have been, but that's got to be a record.
There were no
for
records in 1869.
No.
They were all rookies.
Right. All right, gentlemen, thank you. Mike Canan, John Erardi. It's the Fifth Mascot. It's on 24/7, 365 on WCPO.com. Right back here for more fun and games next Thursday at 1:30. Tell your friends about us if you have any. Tune us in on WCPO.com.